Hi everyone. Welcome to Style3D channel. In this video, you will learn how to use Style3D Simulator Unreal Engine plugin to create a real-time animation. So let's get started. First, add a t-shirt as a prototype for the pattern making. In general, we usually choose add, unless you want to overwrite the clothing in the original window. After adding, adjust the clothing's position. We unfreeze it. Then delete all the fixed pins. Because we need to create clothing animations, this clothing should not have freezing, strengthen, or pins. After simulation, we noticed that the hair and clothing are clipping. So we can delete the hair for now and add it back once the animation is complete. Then delete all unused fabric. In order to make the real-time animate, we need to reduce the size of the project as much as possible. When adjusting the clothing shape, we can strengthen it first. After adjustments, we can then unfreeze it. Remove excess graphics. Next, remove the internal reference lines, and any excess parts inside the clothing. Delete them as well. These things are in preparation for the pattern remaking. Now, let's delete half of the clothing. We can make the other half of the clothing first. Then go over symmetrically. Choose the length we want. Cut it in half from the middle. Ensure that both side seams have the same length. Sew them together. Then creating the front pattern. With a structure similar to a bustier. When cutting, start from the overall shape, and then move to specific sections. Next is the back pattern. We can use the pen tool. And use the left mouse button to drag and edit the curvature of a line. This is the Edit Curvature tool. We press Shift-Q to hide the selected pattern. This makes it easier for observation. Make some shape adjustments. Then, use symmetry, the shape, to mirror the other side over. Merge the front patterns. Sew the back patterns together. Then, use the mouse to select and shrink the overall shape to make the clothing fit better. Then realize that the length isn't sufficient. You can extend it further. At this point, we notice it's not aligned. We can align the sewing lines. Then, let's adjust the fit of the clothing a bit more. We can speed up the process here. Further adjust the shape of the clothing to achieve the desired result. Next, cut the back pattern. Cut it into the desired clothing structure. Then, remove the symmetry axis. Take the upper lines and generate equidistant internal lines. Create a bordered effect. Cut and sew. Now, let's adjust the material of this clothing. Distinguish the materials. Apply texture maps. Note that for the clothing we're creating, because it will be imported to UE later for fabric textures, they need to be slightly larger than normal. Fabric textures must be in JPG format. Avoid using PNG format texture map. For materials with transparency channels, such as lace, use texture.jpg, plus normal map, plus transparency. Fabrics cannot use gloss maps, metal maps, and displacement maps. Then adjust the physical properties to make the clothing look more realistic. Here, we need to synchronize the fabric texture. Then, slightly increase its texture parameters. Add a new fabric for the piping. Then open the symmetry axis. Begin drawing the shape of the pattern on the bustier. We'll skip the drawing process for now. After the drawing is complete, we will apply the new material. We will add it to the pattern we've drawn. Adjust the parameters of the fabric. Now, we can adjust the position of the prepared pattern. Fine-tune its position. Make it look neater and more organized. Up to this point, corset is basically completed. Next, we will add a graphic. We will add a butterfly graphic to the corset. Create a pattern. Move it to the position of the corset. Apply a new material to it. Draw a line in the middle of the corset with the same length as the graphic. Move it to the center of the pattern. Adjust the length of the butterfly's middle part. Adjust it to the same length as the line and overlap them. Now begin drawing the shape of the butterfly. Let's speed up the drawing process. Once the drawing is complete, we will select the butterfly. Select the butterfly. Regenerate it as a pattern. Now, we can imprint this butterfly onto the pattern we've drawn. Adjust its position. Now we can delete the previous pattern. Then move the butterfly we've drawn on top. Next, sew this butterfly onto the corset. You only need to sew the 4 corners of the butterfly. We can adjust the position of the sewing thread. Make it look more aesthetically pleasing. Adjust the material for this butterfly, as well as make adjustments to the graphic. Reduce its gloss and metal to the lowest. Otherwise, importing to UE will cause problems. Next, we find a pair of trousers from the official market. Then do the pants pattern remaking. Adjust the position. Start the simulation. We can use Strengthen tool to adjust the twisted areas. When adjusting, you can flexibly use the layer hierarchy for adjustments. Delete the excess parts. Then we change it to a lace material. Then remove the waistband, because the bond can be adjusted in UE. Next, we create an irregular sleeve. We can use the pen tool to draw the basic pattern of the irregular sleeve on the avatar's body. After drawing, double-click to end the drawing. Press Enter to generate the pattern. Then we move the drawn pattern to an empty position. Sew them together. Simulate. Then we add some curve points to the side seam of the sleeve. With these curve points, we can create the shape of the sleeve that we want. Try to make the lengths of the 2 lines as equal as possible. Then we simulate and find that the shape of the sleeve is what we want. Then adjust the physical properties to make the sleeve more stiffness. We'd better adjust its hardness only through physical properties. Next, After finishing the sleeve, we start drawing the connecting part on the back. In areas where you need to draw curves, you can hold down the Control key to draw. Reduce the particle distance. Sew them together. Since we've only done half, we need to secure it first to prevent it from falling. Next, on the sleeve, draw the graphic of a butterfly. We can draw any graphic we want here. After finishing drawing, cut and sew all the internal graphics together. After that, adjust the color and parameters of the material. Apply a texture. Then we make a hemming effect on the top. Uniformly adjust the thickness of the patterns. Make the sleeve slightly thicker. During the creation process, we can freeze some parts temporarily, as long as we unfreeze them after finishing the creation. Next, let's create the lace part of the sleeves. Turn on arrangement points. Arrange the pattern on the arms. If there's an error, rearrange it. Adjust by drag. This is the mirrored effect we've achieved. To prevent clipping, we can set layers to patterns. We can adjust the physical properties for stiffness. We can freeze all the patterns. To prevent disrupting their forms in the subsequent creation. Then, from the resource library, select a skirt. First, remove the excess parts. Adjust the position of the skirt. Delete all fixed pins. Delete unnecessary internal reference line. Remove the bond. You can harden it a bit. Next, change the skirt pattern. Simulate and we find a sewing error. Delete wrong sewing lines. Patch the sewing line and simulate again. Next, make the skirt more fitted. We'll speed up the process for these adjustments. After the adjustments, let's copy the skirt's patterns to another project. Since we've copied it before, we can delete this. Then, on the skirt, draw the pattern we want. Cut and sew. Then give him a laser material. Color it as we like. Then, we click on 3D snapshot, capture the front view of the skirt, then check transparent background. Save it to a local folder. Then go back to our original project. Import that 3D snapshot. Then attach the graphic to the skirt. Adjust to the same size. Because we want the skirt to have a laser effect. But we can only use a matte material, so we need to express the laser material effect through the graphic. After applying the graphic, let's give the skirt's material. Next, let's create the waistband. Sew the waistband to the skirt. Turn on arrangement points. Arrange the waistband on the avatar. Then simulate. So the waistband. Pay attention to the sewing line direction. Then add edge thickness to the edge line of the waistband. Now, let's move on to the next step. Create the small patterns on the sides of the skirt. Draw the pattern we want. Then copy the pattern. Sew it onto the skirt. Move the pattern to the appropriate position. Reduce particle distance. Simulate. Drag manually a bit. Once one side is done, we can directly copy the other side, generated symmetrically. The benefit of generating symmetrical pieces is that we can control the shape of one side by manipulating the other side. Next, within the pattern, we draw a graphic. Then we add the top stitch lines to the drawn graphic, creating a textured effect. Then, we delete any unused fabric. Next, on the waist of the skirt, we add 2 symmetrical points. Generate a symmetry axis. Adjust the position of the points. Then we draw the outer skirt pattern. Similarly, we start by creating half of it. The length of the outer skirt is twice that of the waist, to achieve a layered effect. Adjust the position of the pattern. Before simulating, we can freeze the created pattern. When simulating, we need to set it to accurate simulation. Adjust the shape of the clothing. Increase the length of the pattern to achieve a slightly trailing effect. Then, we cut out the shape of the skirt that we desire. Excess parts can be deleted. Simulate. Generate symmetrical pieces. Sew them together. Use the symmetry, the shape. Simulate. Unfreeze the inside of the skirt for better clothing simulation effects. Next, we replicate the same pattern to create the outer layer of the skirt. We can start by resetting it as a 2D pattern. Then sew it to the waist. Simulate. Then adjust the size. To highlight the sense of layering, we need to slightly reduce the size of the outer pattern. Too small. Reduce it a bit less. Then simulate. Feels a bit lifted. So, increase the length a bit. Adjust the shape. Lengthen the inner skirt again. Then differentiate the material of the skirt. And then simulate. Drag out the part where the foot is pressing. Let it naturally drape. Next, let's replicate it again. Use a pattern to create the outermost layer of the skirt. First, freeze the inner pattern. Adjust the size. Sew and simulate. Assign a new material to it. Then, shrink it a bit. Adjust the piercing area. Then thaw the 2 layers of the inside skirt. Simulate. Resize again. Notice that the inner shape isn't quite right. We can hide the outer 2 layers for now. Adjust a bit. Then reveal them. Adjust the fabric's material. Then unfreeze all and simulate. Check the final result. Now, let's add hair back to the avatar, as well as shoes. Then adjust the shoe material. Apply a laser material. Start simulating. Notice that there's intersecting with the shoes and stockings. Then in the Shoes attribute editor, uncheck Participate in Simulation. Check as No. Then simulate again to find that the shoes and stockings no longer intersect. We notice that the forms on both sides of the skirt are different. Use the Symmetry Pieces form for one side of the skirt. Finally, do a complete check again. Finally, adjust the vertex count. We need to keep the vertex count under 50,000. Currently, it's clearly over 50,000. So, we need to appropriately increase the particle distance. Let's take another look. It's still too high. Continue adjusting. When adjusting the particle distance, we can select some less obvious patterns. During the reduction process, if too many edges appear, add a few more points at the edges to make it visually smoother. Now it's enough, but we still need to increase the vertex count, because we want to make the clothes more delicacy. While staying under 50,000. Approaching 50,000 as much as possible. So, we need to further decrease the particle distance to make the clothing more detailed. Simulating shows that the form hasn't changed significantly. Then, let's adjust the fabric and materials. Their naming rules are that names can't have special characters or spaces. Only English letters, underscores, and numbers are allowed. Next, let's change their names. Check the fabric texture format again. Texture and normal mapping are indispensable. Graphic formats can be used in JPG and PNG. Rendering type should be matte. Graphics cannot have transparency maps. Smoothness/metalness both are set to 0, and smoothness/metalness maps cannot be used, not supported yet. All effects are only achieved through texture and normal maps. Finally, we arrange the UV. Click the Tools button on the menu bar. Click the UV editor. Select all pieces with Ctrl+A. Click Auto Arrange selected UV. The software will automatically arrange the UV. Note that UV unwrapping must be within the 0 to 1 quadrant and should not overlap. That's it guys, and I hope some of the tips will help your modeling work. If you like what we do, please liking, commenting, and sharing this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in next video. Goodbye.